We are fortunate enough to be joined by Walter Isaacson, New Orleans native, Tulane professor, noted biographer to some of the great minds in history, from Da Vinci to Ben Franklin to Steve Jobs. Walter has written extensively about all of them and has also included information about them in his book, The Innovators. Walter, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Doug. Thanks.
As I said earlier, we normally deal with the New Orleans Pelicans and Saints here, but we want to talk about a little more serious subject today, COVID-19. When you were leading the Aspen Institute, I know that mission statement is to solve the world's problems. How do we solve this problem?
I think it's going to take a dedication, first of all, to science and a belief in scientists. In this case, we need people who can develop vaccines and develop treatments. Once we have good testing, once we have antibody testing so that we know if you're immune to it, then once we have treatments and have a vaccine, we're all going to be able to go back to the Dome. We're all going to be able to go back to the Smoothie King Arena. But until we have some forms of vaccines and treatments that are better than we have now, it's going to be a dangerous slog.
Is that the approach that you think these great innovators that you have written about so extensively would take? Is that how Da Vinci would have attacked the situation?
Leonardo da Vinci helped develop what we now call the scientific method, which means that you look at evidence, then you form a theory, and then you test the theory out. And if the test means, hey, you got to revise your theory, then you revise the theory. He did that over and over again. He was a great anatomist. In other words, he would dissect human bodies and try to figure out, how does the heart work? How does the heart valve work? How can, what happens when the coatings of your arteries get thicker? He was able to discover all of these things. So he took a very scientific approach. And I think if he were around now, he'd be saying, let's all understand what a virus is. Let's understand how viruses attack cells. And then let's figure out step by step the ways we can defeat the viruses. There are wonderful scientists doing this right now. I mean, if you're talking about a war against viruses, the entity that's had the war against viruses for the longest time are bacteria. For 3 billion years, they've been fighting off viruses. So I've been reading some papers in the past 3 or 4 days of people using CRISPR, which is the system that bacteria use to detect and defeat viruses, and adapting that CRISPR system so we can detect and defeat not only the SARS-CoV-2 virus that we're facing now with COVID-19, but all viruses in the future.
So you're confident we have the brain power in the world today to defeat this or come up with a solution where we could live with this?
Oh, absolutely. The question is going to be, and it's a really brutal question, is going to be 4 months from now, 8 months from now, 2 years from now, before we have treatments that make us all feel safe enough that we can end some of this social distancing. But the thing about the United States in particular is that, especially since World War II, we've identified scientific problems and we've had the best innovation, the best research, and with places like Tulane and LSU, you're seeing it happening here, the best universities to put their minds to it.
Right. You bring up Tulane, you bring up LSU. How do you think Louisiana as a state has done in dealing with this situation?
I think Louisiana has done well. I'm sitting here in the French Quarter. You can see the balcony right behind me. We're on Mardi Gras Day. Everybody from the St. Anne's Parade was coming up and we were having drinks. And I think we didn't know back then, nobody knew back then, I never thought about it, that there might be this coronavirus spreading. And it took us a while to react to that. But I think when we got to that St. Patrick's Day weekend, the governor and the mayor and all of our health officials got pretty strong. And if you look at the numbers in New Orleans in particular and in Louisiana, it's very encouraging. Hospitalizations have gone way down. Number of new cases are minuscule compared to what they were 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it shows that we can do it. And as a city, we have a lot of experience with being resilient.
Walter, you were co-chair of the Louisiana Recovery Authority following Katrina. What lessons can we learn and have you learned from that experience that we can apply during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think there's one big lesson, and I don't mean this in a political way, but when I was here right after the storm and the waters had not yet receded, you looked around and you realized we were all in the same boat. I mean that literally, and sometimes, figuratively and everything else, that we were all in this together, that you couldn't just save yourself. The waters didn't stop at zip code lines or anything like that all the time. But we realized we had to look after everybody in New Orleans if we wanted to bring the city back. There was no way to bring it back. There was no way to come back unless we looked at it as if we were all in this together. And I think that's true of coronavirus as well. I mean, it's absolutely literal. I take the St. Charles Avenue streetcar from here in the quarter down to Tulane when I'm teaching. And we're all in that same streetcar. We're all in the same Mardi Gras crowds. We're all at the Pelicans games or the Saints games. And when you look at the dome or the arena with those people, it's all of New Orleans is there, which makes it so vibrant. People from every neighborhood are there.
Walter, you've seen many things in your long career in journalism. Are you hopeful that the United States and Louisiana can recover from this pandemic and life could get back at least somewhat to normal?
After Hurricane Katrina, the question was, can the city ever resume? Can we build the city back? But then we got to an even bigger question, which is not only can the city resume, because we knew it would, but not just building it back, but building it better, building it to the way we would have wanted the city to be. Says, I know whether it's in 8 months or 18 months, we're going to have treatments and vaccines. And so maybe we come out with a society that's more unified, as well as a society that's a little bit more compassionate and a little bit more caring.
Walter Isaacson, thank you for joining us today.